Well, for more on the meal kit market, let's bring in Max Wolff. Max is the chief economist at ICash Group. Welcome, Max.
Thanks.
So let's start off by getting an idea of who the biggest global players are in this meal kit space and what do they do differently?
Yeah, so great to be here. Look, I think that's probably a fast-moving and evolving set of answers, but certainly HelloFresh out of Germany is pretty big. Blue Apron here in the US. Certainly Walmart never does anything small. You really can't when you're the largest employer in the United States and the largest retailer in the world. And likewise, Amazon doesn't do things small. So what we see is these major firms now who believe in and work off economies of scale. And we're hearing that from Blue Apron as well. So we assume globe-girdling super meal kit companies are a breath away.
Now, the whole point of this is convenience, but how are meal kits being embraced in places where mealtime is really a key cultural practice rather than just a way to get a quick bite?
Well, certainly there's different sort of market segmentation. In Japan, we've seen this industry for a long time. In Germany, it sort of got a lot of attention around some recent entrants. In the United States, it breaks up, as it does in many locations, between people trying to pursue a special diet, either for weight loss or because they're vegetarian or vegan or pursuing a national cuisine. But it really does seem to jive very well with a sort of millennial movement here of people who cook for the experience, who, unlike probably almost all previous generations, particularly in the West, didn't grow up cooking with a mother or an aunt or a grandmother, so they really do want to learn, and it's sort of fun and it's an experience, so it's as much cooking as a form of entertainment and recreation as it is just about the meals.
So what's your take on whether the subscription model, like a Blue Apron, whether it has an edge over some of these one-off non-commitment models that Walmart is trying out?
Yeah, well, certainly it's a difficult business, and it's a difficult business when you have to compete with the likes of a Plated, which was recently bought by Albertsons here in the U.S. So it's a tough business to break into when you're against somebody with an economy of scale. And remember, if you're doing just a sort of app version, the way we're seeing from a Blue Apron that's had some distress in the market, then you have to compete with large legacy chains that have distribution centers, ways to absorb cost, ways to move ingredients, and they're not quite as dedicated to the subscription service as per your question. And it's subscription business, it's a little bit harder for people to dabble. They have to have a little more money and be willing to make more of a commitment to what some people may like, but not quite enough to subscribe.
So certainly something for everyone. And in terms of that, we're also seeing a lot more of these niche options opening up, whether it's gluten-free, paleo, keto, and others. So how can smaller companies really distinguish themselves enough to stay profitable?
Well, the problem is when you're trying to figure out how to do something for everyone and hit all these different markets and hit all the different market strains and older and younger and folks who want to sort of dine their way around the world versus health-conscious people, there's lots of error, and we're pretty well assured of seeing major consolidation, as has been the case particularly here in the U.S. with the Silicon Valley funding scenarios. When somebody gets a little bit of traction and has a few big VCs or investors, lots of people throw money at the same business model, they overfund it, and then we have a forced consolidation. And we should keep in mind, too, that everyone has also been excited about delivery companies. So we're doing meal kits, we're delivering groceries, we're delivering food from more restaurants. And on some level, people can only eat so many meals per day. They can only be so adventurous. And so at some point, some of what's left over at the end of the day is going to be some of these business models and some of these companies.
And speaking of leftovers, we saw that first to market doesn't necessarily guarantee success, as we saw with Blue Apron. So what happened there, and how can some of these other newer companies avoid the same fate?
Well, part of what happened with Blue Apron is they were doing pretty well in the growth, but the growth slowed a little bit. They haven't really found a rhythm of how to become profitable. Given a pretty high price point, they're probably not for everybody. And it's been sort of the holy grail in American tech and American business modeling that you don't really want to have to compete with Amazon. And so when we saw both Amazon and then Walmart, so Amazon probably the most feared price pressure mechanism we have in the market, and Walmart the largest grocery store in the United States, when the biggest guy and the nimblest guy both get to the business of practicing for your spot on the team, it makes everybody nervous. And then also we've sort of seen a familiar pattern with IPOs in the US, really not that much to do with Blue Apron, to be fair, where they come in at a very aggressive price, they do pretty well for 6 months until the lockup, then you're allowed to sell them, and unfortunately a lot of people do.
All right, thank you so much. Max Wolff, their chief economist at ICash Group.